Good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, here. Canizaro, here. Dondero Loop, Neal, Nguyen, here. Stone, here. Taylor, present. Titus, here. Assembly members Anderson, present. And Backus, Brown May, Dickman, here. Hafen, Hibbets, Howdigi, Koenig, here. Mosca, here. O'Neill, here. Torres Fawcett, here. Watts, here. Yeager, here. And Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Will you please mark Senator Dondero Loop, Senator Neal, absent excused, Assembly Member Backus, Assembly Member Brown May, absent excused, and mark Assembly Member Hafen present when he arrives. Again, it is Friday. Yay! Seems like it's been like 50 years already in our legislature. Maybe we can catch up on things this weekend. We have one presentation, actually two. The Agency of Nuclear Projects and the Attorney General's Office. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting. If you are watching and you would like to call in for a public comment, the number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 810-4722-4828, and then please press pound. Members will be using their computer devices, so please do not think that they're being rude and not following along, but they will be following along on their laptops. I will ask everyone, including the members, to silence all your electronic devices, put them on vibrate. And with that, we will get our meeting started, and we will start with the Governor's Office, the Agency of Nuclear Projects, and invite the Executive Director. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Fred Dilger, Executive Director of the Agency for Nuclear Projects. I have a short prepared statement. The legal team and staff insisted I work from a prepared statement so I don't go into any kind of lengthy digression. The agency is part of the Governor's Office. We also provide staff support to the 7-member Nevada Commission on Nuclear Projects. Before we discuss the agency budget request, I'd like to provide an overview of the Yucca Mountain licensing proceeding that is currently before the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. Our major task in the upcoming biennium is preparing this license for this licensing proceeding. To do this, we work closely with the Governor's Office, the Congressional Delegation, and the Office of the Attorney General, with whom we coordinate very closely. What exists today at Yucca Mountain is only a 5-mile exploratory tunnel that cannot be used for waste storage or disposal. Congress has not appropriated any funds to the U.S. Department of Energy, the DOE, for the Yucca Mountain project since 2011. In 2008, the DOE submitted the Yucca Mountain license application and the final supplemental environmental impact statement to the NRC. This slide summarized the potential proposed action, which is to dispose of 70,000 metric tons of high-level waste. DOE also had a plan to expand the site to 150,000 metric tons. Over the first 50 years, there would be between 5,000 and 12,000 waste shipments. Over 100 years, up to 26,000 waste packages would be moved into underground tunnels called drifts. The intent is to have the repository prevent groundwater contamination for 1 million years. The estimated total cost to construct the repository is $200 billion in current year dollars, including $8 billion already spent. This is my favorite one-paragraph description of what's wrong with Yucca Mountain. The basic problem is that Yucca Mountain is an unsuitable site for a geologic repository because of its geology and hydrology. Fractured rock above and below the repository horizon will allow highly corrosive oxidizing groundwater to transport radioactive material from the waste packages into the water table that flows into Amargosa Valley. So the water that reaches the waste containers will be acidic and corrosive and eat right through them. and then leak out into Amargosa Valley. The Yucca Mountain design relies on engineered barriers, not the rock, to protect the groundwater. The DOE claims no protection at all from burying it in the mountain. There's actually no point burying it in the mountain, given their plan. The barriers are primarily titanium drip shields that are needed to overcome the deficiencies in geology and hydrology. Without these drip shields properly installed and functioning perfectly, the repository does not work. Almost as much titanium as nuclear waste will have to be put into the mountain. If constructed, Yucca Mountain would become the world's largest titanium store of aircraft-grade titanium. The license application asserts that over 90 years after operations begin, the drip shields will be robotically installed over up to 26,000 titanium, one over each waste package. Each titanium drip shield is 19 feet long, almost 10 feet tall, and weighs over 10,000 pounds. Installation would have to be done robotically because of the intense radiation. The package surface dose rate is over 1,000 rem per hour, and high temperatures, it would be 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit in the drifts. The cost would be between $18 billion and $40 billion, which Congress would have to appropriate in the future. So the plan is basically to have robots we don't have install drip shields over packages we don't have. That's the plan. The NRC licensing proceeding was suspended for lack of funds in 2011. It was restarted in 2013 by a court order that directed NRC to spend all their remaining funds, even if there isn't enough to complete licensing. Currently, we get an email every month that tells us that the NRC spent about $300 a month out of the remaining $200,000 in their waste fund to tell us how much money is left in the waste fund. Even if there isn't money to complete licensing, NRC currently has insufficient funds for the next phase, which are trial-like hearings. Nevertheless, Yucca Mountain, support for Yucca Mountain in Congress remains strong, as we saw just last year on April 9th in a congressional hearing. If the license proceeding is funded, Nevada will forcefully adjudicate all 218 admitted contentions, challenges to the application, and submit 30 to 50 new contentions. The licensing proceeding will last up to 10 years and cost DOE and NRC $2 billion. We expect to defeat the license application on the facts. We work with the congressional delegation every year to ensure the license does not receive funding. Yucca Mountain is obsolete in many, many ways. The proposed waste packages do not exist. They've never been built. They're not in use by the utilities. The riskiest part of the radiological system is to repackage the waste from one package into another. And all of the waste would have to be repackaged at the foot of Yucca Mountain, which is very prone to earthquakes and other natural problems. Approximately 30% of our nuclear power plants are not even connected to a rail line, so the billions of dollars would have to be spent to construct rail spurs to connect the existing nuclear power plants to main rail lines. The cap on the amount of waste placed into Yucca Mountain was set by Congress at 77,000 tons of uranium. We already have 92,000 tons of waste. It's safely stored where it's at the reactor sites where it was generated. But we're actually in a place where we should begin looking for a new repository. We have 16 licensing contentions that challenge every aspect of DOE's transportation plan. About half of the country's population lives in the 982 counties along the routes to Yucca Mountain. The shipments create 4 kinds of radiological hazards: routine exposure to the public, routine exposure to the workers, radiation exposure and a release of radioactive material following a severe accident, and/or a terrorist threat or sabotage. Up to 85% of the shipments to Yucca Mountain could directly impact Las Vegas. 2 truck shipments every week using the Beltway, and 1 dedicated train shipment every month through downtown for 50 years. But because everything is interconnected, if DOE changes routes to avoid Chicago, which is likely, The number of nuclear waste trains through Las Vegas could go up to 100 per year. More than 10% of Clark County's residents live within that pink shaded zone shown in the slide, 1/2 mile on each side of the shipment routes. This is what the DOE correctly calls the region of influence for routine radiation. The shipments funnel down into near the destination, of course, and so the area affected is closest to the repository would be the one most affected by the routine radiation. This zone would also require special preparation to prevent accidents and plan appropriate emergency response. Under certain circumstances, traffic gridlock incidents, close proximity to regular stop locations, transport near large crowds at special events, routine radiation can have health impacts. Credible studies also show that social impacts result from stigma, perceived risk, reputational harm, include diminished property values, unfavorable business location decisions, and adverse impacts on tourism. Every 6 months, I have to put a little sentence into the statement for our bond issuing authority about the status of Yucca Mountain, because it affects our ability to borrow money. Cask vulnerability in severe accidents like the 2001 Baltimore Tunnel Fire and the 2007 MacArthur Maze Fire in California is an unresolved technical debate, but we know the casks are vulnerable to attacks using commercial and military explosives. DOE acknowledges that a release of radioactive material in an urban area following an accident or attack could cause $20 billion in cleanup costs and economic losses. Our studies using their models, their computer models, show the costs much higher. So just about what the agency does, we work very closely to ensure that we provide policy advice to the governor, the legislature, the congressional delegation, county and tribal governments, other state agencies, and basically we watch the activities related to high-level waste, activities at the Nevada National Security Site, and nuclear energy generally. We act as a clearinghouse for information related to things like advanced nuclear fusion technology, high-level waste, that kind of thing. And we watch what goes on at NNSS, of course. This slide shows the distribution of the agency budget. The budget has remained flat for 8 years. We're very careful with the stewards of the public money. One area that we have been successful in, we have produced and deployed a large number of social media in podcasts and YouTubes, and we've had it targeted right at the people, the relatively few people that care about this, and it has had a very positive effect. So this is my 31st year working in this field. Nevada should have lost this fight. We've been David and Goliath since 1985. We've closely followed the technical and scientific facts and evidence, and we aggressively made our case. We have had knockdown dragouts with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the DOE about our technical points, and we have largely talked them around to our point of view. Because of this legislature's support for this agency, we're the only party of the 19 parties for the Yucca Mountain licensing proceeding that's ready to go. Next week, I'll be back in Washington lobbying for some legislation to fix this. I'll be able to take out my phone, waggle it at the other participants and say, look, we're ready to fight this license. All I need is 30 minutes and a phone call, and we're ready to fight. You will need 10 years and $1 billion, north of $1 billion to be ready. It gives us an incredible deterrent that we would likely need. So last slide, the time may be right for Congress to finally fix this problem and end this crazy program. We're likely to face an increasing need, a spike for energy in the United States. The largest item in the federal government's judgment fund, the largest payment for failing for some kind of criminal or civil judgment against the federal government comes from the failure to take the waste. And as well as conflicts with DOD activities at Creech, which I didn't want to go into, but the fact is that in 2008, the probability of a jet plane, a loaded jet plane, crashing into the extremely vulnerable surface facilities at Yucca Mountain exceeded the NRC's standards for that by 10,000 times. That was 2008, before all of the other activity going on at Creech. Now they're building a rocket. It's my understanding they're going to be constructing a rocket base there. So it's just not, it doesn't work anymore. Nevada has changed. That area has changed, as you know better than I do. So I don't think we can, I think the time may be right for Congress to finally act. Thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation and the fight that you're in. We do have at least one question for you. We're going to go to Assembly Member Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, in this case, or Dr. Dillinger, but thank you for being our David against the Goliaths. My question is not necessarily based upon the budget. It's more based upon the philosophies, especially as it impacts natural resources. When I take a look at the slide, I believe it was slide 6, that is the rail movement, as well as the impact it could have within that half-mile radius. Has there been any discussion about working with rail services also? How, I don't know if we can stop that from coming through our state. However, based upon the number of crashes we've seen lately with railways, as well as an attempt sometimes to cut down the number of cars that can be on a train, I guess, trip. Just wondering if there's been any discussion about that as well, and the dangers with it.
Thank you for the question. For the record, Fred Dilger, the railroads do not want to carry this stuff. They engaged in a 25-year-long lawsuit to keep from carrying it, and they lost. But you never completely lose a lawsuit. And so the response to this was that the waste could only be carried on a certain kind of train that met the OT 55 standards from the American Association of Railroads. And the DOE has, to its credit, has developed developed and tested two rail cars, the Atlas and Fortis rail cars, that there are. One has been, the Atlas has been tested and is being deployed or can be deployed, and the Fortis, a smaller car, is currently in testing right now. That said, that's just the rail car. That's not the rest of the track and all the other problems that are out there that are involved in this. And these are very good rail cars, and we have no reason to believe they won't be able to operate safely. And they're intended to work on dedicated rail, as a dedicated train, which means it doesn't travel in general freight mixed in with other kinds of freight cars. But we're talking about a lot of movements over a very long period of time. And we've done some calculations on the accident probabilities and that kind of thing. Even, and accidents of course occur in a continuum. So you have like a lot of very trivial accidents, small derailments and that kind of thing. But then you also have very rare, very unusual accidents that could challenge I want to go back to the slide with the MacArthur Maze overpass tunnel, the Baltimore tunnel fire in 2001. That was one of those big fights we had with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We had dueling computer models to discuss the amount of heat that was generated in that fire. And we concluded that, yes, in fact, it did exceed regulatory limits and, in fact, could have caused the failure of a cask. And that led to a whole new fight about, well, what does it mean when the cask fails? So the answer is yes, but the answer is also accidents are accidents, and they are, you know, imponderable. The severity is, you know, is just not knowable.
Thank you. And a second then question as well, with the last slide of like the time may be right for congressional action. What do we do as a legislature to help you win this battle?
We are, first, continued funding. That's the main. I think we're close. Next week, as I said, I'm going back to DC, and we're going to talk about legislative principles to finally end this. One of the things that I'm able to say is that I have this legislature's support, and that if you know, we've had to be junkyard dogs about this for a long time, and our position is that if you want to try and do this, we're going to fight you every step of the way. And that's a message I'm going to go back and convey to them again next week.
You're welcome. Members, any other questions? Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Slightly off the budget again. Have we looked at, I agree with you, Yucca Mountain as a nuclear repository is really a dead issue, or should be a dead issue, a waste of time. However, we have spent, when I say we, the federal government and even Nevada has spent a tremendous amount of time and money on digging a hole. Have we looked at any other purpose? Maybe we could divert the argument from what waste to actually what it could be used for the benefits?
For the record, Fred Dilger, thank you. Yes, we have. There's been discussions about using it as a data center and other things like that. Our primary focus has been to find a solution to the problem, which is basically to have a new site selection process. We want to get the focus off of Nevada, off of the Yucca Mountain site, and onto a new process. One of the best things that we've done in our social media is we were able to record former Representative Jim Bilbray right before he passed, about 6 months before he passed, telling the story about how Yucca Mountain got selected and how it was chosen for political science, not geologic science. And we've been crippled by this ever since. So the answer is there's not a lot of good alternate uses for the site. One of the things that is being proposed is to actually remediate the site and return it to its original condition to a great extent. And as a part of that, we support that. Right now, it's my understanding that the tunnel's inhabited by a family of barn owls, and there's a lot of animal scat and remains in the tunnel now, and we think it should be closed and kind of remediated a little bit. One of the other aspects of this is there are a lot of tribal remains that were on Yucca Mountain, Snake Mountain, to the tribal members, and those items, those artifacts, we're working with the Stacy Mantooth and Nevada Tribal Council to get those returned to the tribes. Well, they've been in storage on the second floor of the Atomic Testing Museum in Las Vegas since 1987.
I appreciate that. Are you still doing tours?
There are no tours of Yucca Mountain right now.
Well, I appreciate that. If there's anything we can do naturally or I personally, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you so much, Director, for joining us here today and for the presentation. With that, we'll close the budget hearing for the Agency of Nuclear Projects, and we'll invite to the table the Attorney General's office and welcome Attorney General Ford and his team. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Monroe Moreno. My name is Aaron Ford, spelled Aaron, last name Ford, and I am your Attorney General. Good morning to the members of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. It is my delight to be here. I am accompanied today with several members of my office, including 2 members of my 5-member executive team. To my right is my Chief of Staff, Teresa Benitez Thompson. In the audience is one of my 2 co-equal Assistant Attorneys General, Christine Jones Brady. I also have to my left my Fiscal Department Chief, Jessica Holman, and we have Ann Jones in the audience as well. And from my HR department, we have Rocio Lopez and Osiris Noble. And then finally from my team as well is Mike Morton, who works on my legislative agenda, among other things. They will all not be testifying, but I wanted to introduce them to you because they are here and instrumental in things that we do. I am quite thankful to the people of Nevada for granting me an additional 4 years to serve as their Attorney General. I don't take lightly the continued trust that Nevadans have granted me to ensure their public safety and to seek justice for all. To be respectful of your time, my staff and I will be succinct and focus on budget highlights. And if I may beg your indulgence, Madam Chair, upon me finishing this particular prefacing comment, I would ask that I be allowed to depart. I have a few other things to address today as well.
Understand.
Thank you. I remain resolute in my leadership and governance over the Nevada Attorney General Office, with its 155 driven attorneys, 62 dedicated investigators, and 200 outstanding support staff across 23 divisions, enforcing the breadth of Nevada law. We are united under a common belief that our job is justice. And if you were to ask any of my 400 coworkers what our job is, they would say to you that our job is justice. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, the Attorney General represents the people of Nevada. We represent the people's best interest before state and federal trial and appellate courts in criminal and civil matters. We also serve as legal counsel to state officers, state departments, and most state boards and commissions. Additionally, my office works with our local, state, and federal enforcement partners to protect the public. Before starting our budget presentation, I want to begin with some gratitude, and that gratitude is a thank you to you all on this dais and others in this building for the COLAs that you passed last session. They've been instrumental in bringing down our vacancy rate and have moved the office closer to being an employer of choice. I'm also thankful for the pay parity adjustments that you made last session for our investigators and for our legal secretaries, which has corrected legal legacy inequities that predate my presence in the office for years. I'm also thankful for the hundreds of hours that staff, especially fiscal staff, across executive and legislative budgets have dedicated to ensure that the state has constitutionally required balanced budget. Strong financial stewardship over taxpayer dollars is of utmost importance to me, and I want to share just a couple of highlights taken from our office's biannual report with you. Our Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, we call it MFCU, obtained judgments in criminal and civil cases totaling over $13 million. And if you were to look at our biannual report, that'd be page 22. That money is returned to the Medicaid system for use in providing needed medical services to impoverished Nevadans. Additionally, the MFCU obtained 38 convictions and an additional 17 civil settlements between 2022 and 2024. I continue also to hold the pharmaceutical industry accountable for the devastating harms and impacts that opioids have caused across Nevada communities. I'm proud to say that we now stand over $1.2 billion in recoveries. That's billion with a B, that my office has been able to secure over the next 20 years by holding these entities accountable. Transparency of these dollars is paramount to me. In this past year, that's the reason why we worked with the Department of Health and Human Services to produce a data dashboard so that members of the public can track the flow of these dollars that my office has successfully procured. I joined a coalition of states to request recently a temporary restraining order to prevent the Federal Office of Management and Budget from enacting an indefinite pause on federal assistance. This is important, and this litigation is critical to the state of Nevada because, as I understand it, 31.5% of the state's budget for healthcare, education, law enforcement, fire disaster relief, and infrastructure come from federal grants and awards. And such an act would be devastating for Nevadans. And so I am proud that my office sprung to immediate action to hold the federal government accountable for that devastating action. Between 2022 and 2024, the investigation division in my office reviewed more than 8,000 complaints concerning cybercrime, fraud, human trafficking, missing children, and public integrity concerns. My office is intimately engaged in public safety and protecting Nevadans across the state. And many of those reviews turned into active investigations and subsequent prosecutions. Our Constituent Services Unit received thousands of communications, calls, letters, and emails over the biennium, and many of those complaints resulted in investigations and even settlements. An example I can provide is a Walmart settlement that we engaged in out of a complaint that arose right out of Reno, Washoe County. We got a phone call saying that the price on the shelf was not what they were charging at the register. We engaged with Walmart and were able to obtain a $2 million settlement to redress those concerns. Again, my office is intimately engaged in protecting the public safety, but also consumer protection in this state, and that's just an example. For a full accounting of our work, please read our 2022-2024 biennial report, which can be found online at ag.nv.gov. And at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson and Chief Financial Officer Jessica Hoban. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. And before you leave, I believe Senator Titus has a question. She's going to do it at the end. Never mind. All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, members of Ways and Means and Senate Finance. Pleasure to be here with you this morning. Before we begin the budget overview, I wanted to let you know a little bit about how we arranged the conversation today for our presentation. We know that we are asking for a number of new positions, and so we thought organizing the conversation by those positions might make more sense in the big picture in terms of the rhyme and reasons of what we're asking for and how these positions requests are coming together. Well, for the record, Teresa Benitez Thompson, Chief of Staff to Attorney General Ford, in case I forgot to say that. But first, I wanted to start off, but before we dive into 1030, just so that you know a little bit about the process internally that we went through to come to the decisions that are before you for consideration today. So in talking with the chiefs across the agency, with our investigators, with our fiscal accounting staff, and talking with everyone, there were a lot of needs and a lot of asks. And that's true, I know, of every agency that comes before you in terms of state government. And so we did more of analysis of what is the biggest impact, positive impact that we can make for this office, and what is that ask? And we decided that that was really new positions, that we did not need new programs. We don't need necessarily big chunks of money to do things. We're not coming with a big general fund ask, but we need new positions. And the positions had been asked for in different positions across previous budgets, but of course, over the past 10, 15 years, the ability to grow the office really hasn't been there. And in fact, the office had lost positions over time. And so there was kind of this legacy pent-up request, and it made sense to ask for positions, and that's what we focused on and what AG Ford prioritized on. It might, in terms of quantity, seem like a lot, but as we go through the budget, what you'll see is it's mostly where the divisions that have the heaviest workload and where we could justify the need the best for the new positions, that's where we targeted the request for those positions. So with that kind of overarching thought in mind, I'll start moving through 1030. 1030 is the largest budget within the Office of Attorney General. This hosts our most souls, the most number of people that we employ are in this budget, as well as most of the resources for the office as well. So the first thing we're requesting is in terms of legal staff, we are asking for 6 new senior deputy attorney general positions. The first one is going to be E250 and Medicaid. So at present, the attorneys that we have working in Medicaid, we have 2 full-time attorneys and 2 part-time attorneys who are dedicated to Medicaid work. So we have 4 people, but essentially working 3, the hours of 3 attorneys. And they cannot keep up with the growth in client advice regulation, Medicaid estate recovery at present. And as Medicaid grows, our attorneys are going to continue to struggle with meeting the requests of the department for the legal counsel and legal work that they need. And so we're requesting 1 new senior DAG to represent and work on Medicaid work. The Department of Health and Human Services Medicaid roles have doubled since 2014. And this has created an enormous increase in workload for those 4 attorneys, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. This new attorney position will cover staffing shortages in the following areas. So 1, they're going to present at fair hearings for recipients and providers. In 2023, there were 631 fair hearings and for recipients denied coverage and 348 fair hearings for providers. They're also going to assist with Medicaid estate recovery program and third-party liability cases. At present, this is where our 2 half-time attorneys are doing this work. In 2023, the attorneys assisted the clients with recovering $7.4 million. They're also going to assist with addressing increased workload and regulation development, document production, hearings, workshops, inclusive of public option legal work. The next new senior DAG position we are requesting is in our Government and Natural Resources divisions, and this is for the Agency of Nuclear Projects that you just heard the presentation on. So they have been served by 2 outside counsel with contracts and with the monthly budget totaling over $100,000 in those contracts. And one of the outside counsels has indicated a desire to discontinue a service. So this provides us with the opportunity to look at that work and bring that work in-house. We do believe that that work justifies a senior deputy attorney position. And they're going to be devoted completely to nuclear practice with a focus on Yucca Mountain licensing and litigation. E278, so this is within our criminal prosecutions division. At present, there are 3 attorneys, 2 in the south and 1 in the north, that prosecute criminal matters, including the crimes that happen within the Department of Corrections. And really, it's the cases that are coming out of the Department of Corrections where we're seeing that trend and that growth increase. In 2022, we had 71 referrals from the Nevada Department of Corrections. In 2023, we had 97 referrals. With this trend, we're on pace to nearly double the caseload from 2 years ago. Additionally, there's been an increase in homicides at NDOC, and these are very extensive, lengthy cases. They take a lot of time, and they require experienced attorneys. To give an example, in 2005 alone, we've already had 2 homicides, making for a total of 7 in the past 10 months. And to give you a comparison and benchmark for that, between 2021 and 2023, there were a total of 7 homicides coming from NDOC. One of those homicides, the more recent ones, I talked about the 7 in the past 10 months, one of those cases alone has 20 co-defendants. The next one we're going to talk about is complex litigation. This is E303. So within our complex litigation division, this division takes on cases from our other internal AG divisions when lengthy litigation and high valuation cases are involved. So we are requesting a new senior deputy attorney position here to keep pace with the referrals into the division. This position will assume a caseload of high valuation cases, which often involves settlement and verdict dollars that impact our tort claim fund. The attorneys must be experienced trial attorneys, so please at least to SDAG for the consideration of this. The next one is E305, and this is requesting a Deputy Attorney General to support our work with taxation. So this DAG would represent the taxation and aid it in addressing a backlog and a separate backlog of the number of cases regarding modified business tax, a substantial increase in liquor cases and a related backlog growing and fairly substantial increase in the amount of daily service as a result of employee turnover and growth within the department. One of the things to consider is, as I was researching this and looking back at the agency org charts and the history of the Office of Attorney General, the attorney positions that we have today on February 21st, 2025, are the same amount that we had in 2005, that the office had in 2005. So if you think about all the statute changes, all the new tax law regulations, with the new laws come the people who can, have their due process to argue against an audit finding or such like that. The work has grown, and so at the very, very minimum, one new DAG, but we are having conversations with Department of Taxation because they have separate requests on attorneys, and we believe the work is there. We just need to have additional conversations about exactly the delegation of those work and those divisions' tasks as well. Next, E308 with the Nevada Department of Corrections, our litigation team that handles them. So this is different than our prosecution teams who handle the cases come in. This is the attorneys for the client of the Nevada Department of Corrections. So additional representation is needed here. We're requesting one new senior deputy attorney general. This is the heaviest litigation division that we have. Really, they're averaging about 600 cases, and what we're trying to do is get that caseload down to about 35 to 40 cases per attorney. And so right now, and you guys were so kind at last session as to allow us to reclassify one deputy attorney general to senior deputy attorney general, because this is a division where we have a lot of line DAGs, and we were trying to even out the ratio of supervisory attorneys with the line DAGs. And so if we could get another senior deputy attorney general, it will help us get to that ideal caseload, which should be more manageable for the attorneys in that division. We're going to continue on into we are requesting, so those are the senior deputy attorney positions. We have a request for 2 new just deputy attorney general positions. So the first one of those is being requested in the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, DPBH. They have 2 full-time DAGs representing the state in a number of forensic cases, and numerous court documents show the number of statewide competency treatment commitments to DPBH pursuant to NRS 178 have increased from 202 cases in 2012 to 598 cases in 2022. So long-term commitments pursuant to NRS 178 are increasing and growing at a pretty quick pace. We are requesting 1 new attorney position to represent DPBH in behavioral health and forensics, and this new attorney position will cover staffing shortages in the following. So first of all, these attorneys are constantly in court. They are always in court attempting to defend the state in contempt hearings and other hearings related to forensic issues, including petitions for conditional release, motions for clarification, and motions for extensions on risk assessments. The same 2 DAGs that we have right now in the status quo represent public and behavioral health, who also handle civil commitments for Department of Public and Behavioral Health and represent the Aging and Disability Division. However, intense time is devoted to forensics, and that's interfered with the ability of the attorneys to give time to the ADSD client on important issues regarding developmental services, early intervention services, home and community-based services, suspected abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable individuals. Additionally, we've seen an increase from ADSD in the number of guardianship cases. Until recently, within the past couple years, there were just a few guardianship cases that were filed by our office on behalf of the state, and now there are multiple requests to file the guardianships weekly, especially with the elderly and very elderly population. Now we're on, are we on 251 now? 275, right? Okay, 275. Okay, 275 is a request for post-conviction unit. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, I have so many notes that I got out of order. Okay, 275. There we go. All right. So with this decision unit, we're requesting one new Deputy Attorney General position to support the increase in legal casework, case filings, and litigations for the post-conviction division. These new positions will address deficits in the following: new state time computation within the habeas mandamus cases have nearly doubled since 2023 compared to the number of new state cases opened in 2021 and 2022. Federal habeas cases, these are the USDC civil 2254 filings, and those have increased 24% between September 2022 and October 2023. Also dealing with wrongful conviction compensation since the end of 2022, extensive discovery and motion practice has become necessarily due to more complex cases that the office is seeing. We've got that request for a DAG there. So now that we've made it through the attorney request, the next consideration that we had and that we heard from the office was we absolutely need the attorneys. That is the soul of what the Office of Attorney General does. But in order to make sure that they can work well, we really need the support staff who support the attorneys in their work. And so I've heard very clearly from our legal researchers, our legal secretaries, and our chiefs to make sure that we had consideration for the support staff so that we didn't become lopsided in the amount of support that the attorneys have. So I'm going to start reviewing those support staff requests with you. The first one is E277. And this is a legal researcher in the Criminal Prosecutions Division. There we go. Okay. So this is one new legal researcher position. This division currently has one legal researcher supporting 19 attorneys, and an additional position is needed to support the workload. So that would put them at a ratio of the 2 legal researchers with those 19, hopefully 20 attorneys if we get the additional position that we're requesting for. So that would be 1 legal researcher assigned to 10 attorneys. The next one is E300, a legal researcher in our post-conviction division. So this requests 1 new legal researcher within the post-conviction division, and this division currently has 1 legal researcher for 13 deputies. This causes several issues when preparing for an evidentiary hearing in the state or federal courts because the attorneys cannot conduct the research necessary to cross-examine experts. It just takes them longer, or lay persons without the assistance of another additional full-time legal researcher to support those needs. Decision unit E302. So here is the request for additional legal secretaries. We right now have, depending on the unit, 1 legal secretary to support 3 to 4 attorneys. And ideally, it would be best practice if we could get to 1 legal secretary to support 2 attorneys, so 1 to 2 ratio. This request doesn't quite get us there, but it gets us closer. I think it gets us closer to like if you did the math, 2.5, but realistically, it means we could get closer to having, as opposed to 3 to 4 per legal secretary, in some situations 2, in a lot of other situations 3, and we could make that work. So what we're asking for is 4 legal secretaries and then 2 supervising legal secretaries for the total of so we make sure we have the right supervision for the legal secretaries that are being requested there. So for a total of 6 positions there. E309, this is a request to support patterns and practice staff, two compliance investigators, and administrative assistants. So a total of 3 new positions. During the 2020-21 session, AB 58 was approved regarding suspected use of force by law enforcement. A chief position was provided last session. We are so thankful for that. We have brought that person on. They've been working diligently in creating the policy for the office and standing up that office. In conversations with them about being able to fully execute the work that they would need to do, we realized that we're going to need the administrative assistants to sort through the referrals that are coming in and to help with that referral and intake process, and then the compliance investigators, so that after we review those referrals and we know what we want to move forward with, we can have investigators to do the work to gather information for us. So this request includes costs for special equipment, travel, vehicles as well. We've got a handful of reclassifications that we are asking for, not very many. Like I said, in the past, there's been a lot of conversation around trying to reclassify to get the office what it needs, and so we have a minimal amount of reclassifications for you. The first one is E815, requests a reclassification of position control number 0270, which provides support to Health and Human Services. Currently, this position is a part-time Deputy Attorney General. Not only is it part-time, professional level, difficult to fill and recruit for, but the needs of the client agency have increased, so we really need that to be a full-time position. It's kind of a leftover from, I think, maybe 3 or 4 administrations ago, where there was permission to create part-time attorney positions, and the state's just kind of moved away from the practice of that. So we'd like to see that position moved from part-time to full-time one. E816 requests a reclassification of control number 1072 from a Deputy Attorney General to a Senior Deputy Attorney General. Last session, this new position was approved, and this is the position that provides support to the Office of Secretary of State. We really need that person to be at a Senior Deputy Attorney General level versus a DAG level. And so this is to realign the position title with the intent of the request and the work that we're having done for the SOS office. Going into administrative staff, so now we're done with kind of the legal side of the house. Now we're moving into administrative staff. So in looking at the needs, once again, what does the office need? What are the positions that are going to really be able to maximize in terms of our services to our clients and being responsive to our clients, and also our community partners as well? So the first request is E301, 2 new staff in our fiscal office. You wouldn't know it by looking at her, but Chief Financial Officer Jessica Hoban, sometimes we have to hold her up with duct tape. I spend massive amounts of Starbucks trying to caffeinate this woman. They work very hard, and we are not able to keep the pace as much and as wonderful as our fiscal staff is. So we're requesting an accounting assistant 4 and a management analyst 1 to make sure that we're getting payments out timely, whether that be the payments to the court, whether that be payments from grants that we're pushing out. We want to make sure that we are able to pay folks within 30 days and not have any kind of a backlog in terms of just the papers stacking up on that. And Chief Hoban's more than willing to add paragraphs of justification to you on this if you would like it. We'll hold for now on questions, but we're happy to talk more to that one. Constituent services. So within our constituent services unit, we're requesting 1 new administrative assistant to represent the constituent services unit. The number of complaints coming into this unit from the public has increased dramatically, and it shows no signs of slowing down in an effort to prevent an effort to be as responsive as we can to the public, we are hoping that we can get this position to address these concerns. So right now, our response time to the public is running longer than we would like to see it, longer than AG Ford absolutely would like to see it. Once these requests come in, it takes quite a bit of time to discern whether it's just a public view, whether it's concern, and then flush out what is we need to send to investigations as well. So this position would really be helpful to us in making sure we're being responsive to the community and their needs. Decision Unit 811 requests a reclassification position of control number 0309 in the Constituent Services Unit Division. So this position is currently serving as our Director of Constituent Services Unit, but the current title is Legal Researcher. So this position does not engage in legal research work. Rather, the director has a unit that responds to thousands of complaints a month, breaches of law and other violations. So the actual duties that she performs day to day line up with the Program Officer 3. Still in administrative staff, E306, this is requesting one new position to support our IT division, an IT technician 6 position for desktop to provide support for systems and network operation and to support the needs of the Office of Attorney General. We also have E307, which is a business analyst 3. And this would be to support the need of the Office of Attorney General regarding system implementation, growth, and maintenance. A good example would be we are about to engage in a new contract, a new statewide victim notification vendor contract, which is going to require quite a bit of time to onboard all of our community partners to the states, lots of Microsoft licensing and lots of IT work on that. They're really the lead on these new budgets that come in, and this will support us to get those done in a timely manner. All right. We'll move into our investigation staff. So you're going to see this decision unit throughout different budgets. What we are asking to do is consolidate all of our investigators into one budget, because on the operations side, it's going to make management of our investigators so much easier within the office and create more ability for parity. So right now we have investigators spread across a handful of budgets. I think it's 6 budgets. And all of those budgets are structured differently. Some, if they're in 1030, they don't have reserves. Others might have reserves. Others are fee funded. Some are AG cap funded. They all have different kinds of parameters around them. So it really constrains how we can, for example, with the COLAs last session, one account had the COLAs, one account doesn't. One account for the investigators to be able to do specific type of work will authorize it, well, and this other account might not. So we just need our investigators not to feel that tension. We can do it on the back end by creating one account, moving them there, and then we'll get it'll be just a lot easier for operations for our investigators. E901. So this requests transfers of investigator positions which organizationally report to the Chief of Investigations, positions consisting of criminal investigators supervisors, deputy chief investigators, and crime assignment investigators applicable from each budget account. And this represents a transfer to the newly proposed investigations unit, budget account 1034, to align with programs and current administrative structure. This E320, this is currently a position that's filled with a contract position that we would like, that we're being asked to resituate. So this is associated with position control number 0018, the chief investigator position within the Office of Attorney General. So this position has been filled with a temporary contract employee. It has been since the person came on board with Attorney General Ford. This current incumbent was selected and desires to remain with these duties under the current administration's elected term. The governor's recommended budget created this decision unit to represent payment from the operating category 04 with the intent of the agency to retain the state position in the personnel category 01 for future administrations. E311, this requests cost to upgrade our ProLaw software, which is our case management system used by the attorneys, investigators, and legal staff. It's also how we track hours for AG for our cost allocation. E335, cell phone assignments. This request funds cell phones for staff who frequently work off-site, who are more field-based outside of regular business hours, or are often away from their desk, assisting staff members of the public as part of their duties. E340, request funds for professional licenses authorized for reimbursement per the State Administrative Manual, Section 2629. This is the one that most of our attorneys are the most excited about. It's also one that in our conversations with Governor's Finance Office, we were clear from AG Ford's direction that this should not be just the benefit for attorneys who work in the Office of Attorney General. Really, if you're going to pay the license for attorneys, pay the license for attorneys statewide. And so I believe that that has been honored through other budgets where you have attorneys positioned. We don't intend this just for, we didn't want to be the only ones asking for this for our attorneys. They need them across the board, just in terms, got to be fair. And I believe that is it for budget 1030. That's our biggest budget, Madam Chair. I think I'll look to you. Would you like to kind of walk through questions in this budget?
Yes.
It's the biggest, okay.
We're going to walk through questions at
Okay.
the end of each budget presentation, and we do have a few. That was a lot of information, and you may have covered some of the information of questions that members have, but we're going to ask you to kind of expand upon it, okay? And we're going to start the questioning out with Assembly Member Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. It's great to see you here. So I think you did talk a little bit about this, but for item E251, why is the addition of the unclassified Deputy Attorney General necessary to support the public and behavioral health unit in behavioral health and forensics, and how would this position address the unit's current needs?
Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it. To Member Torres Fawcett, Teresa Benitez Thompson, Chief of Staff to Attorney General Ford. The attorneys that we have right now, they're constantly in court. You may have heard a little bit about what's been happening in these types of cases play out in the news over the past year. There's lots of conversation about being able to meet behavioral health and how the state is struggling with forensics beds, and the ability to meet the needs of this population. On the back end, the legal side has been especially arduous as well. There's multiple court and stakeholder meetings being requested weekly as the courts and community attempt to address these issues, and the time commitment affects the attorney's ability to represent DPBH in all other matters statewide. In addition, DPBH behavioral health to the behavioral health matters statewide, the same two attorneys that we have right now in our current structure are feeling a compromise in their work to ADSD, and we don't want that. In terms of having a client service perspective, we want to be able to give the clients the support that they need. The intense time devoted to various DPBH behavioral health matters throughout the state include the forensic matters, the civil commitments, inpatient, outpatient behavioral health matters, behavioral health and wellness prevention matters throughout the state as well. And then I spoke about the guardianship cases. If you like, I can quantify for you. At the time that we did the budget build, starting at like 6 months ago, I believe we gave one set of numbers, but if you would like a more contemporary number in those number of filings that we're doing per week on behalf of the state, we can provide that as well, because I think that helps give some context too in terms of the use of their time.
Yeah, if you could provide that to us whenever you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. You kind of talked about some of them when it came to the legal researchers and the need for them. I believe you had indicated that currently you have one legal researcher for every 19 attorneys. And you had talked about this, and I'm talking about, E277, those legal researchers. I know that there's a couple of requests like in different areas. What is the optimal ratio for legal researchers to deputy and senior deputy DAG positions for the Criminal Prosecution Division?
Thank you so much to Senator Nguyen, Teresa Benitez Thompson. That's a really good question. So the need for legal researchers really varies from division to division, depending on the type of work that they do. Most of our divisions do not have one. So in the entirety of the Office of Attorney General, where we have 155 attorneys, we only have at present right now 9 legal researcher positions. And so where we are asking for the positions is just the divisions where we are the most frequently in court. So E277 Criminal Prosecutions Division, this is one where we currently have 1 legal researcher to 19 attorneys. And so that's one where they really do need the additional work where they're very litigation heavy and they need that research. The other one with the post-conviction division. So it's not every division in our office that needs a legal researcher or even has one. These were the 2 that we identified as desperately needing the additional help.
Thank you. And then I guess I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. So I'm talking about E276, the one unclassified senior DAG for the nuclear practice with a focus on Yucca Mountain licensing. I believe that's always been like a contractual position. Is that person retiring? I'm imagining this is a very specialized area. Can you talk a little bit about the plans to, like, I guess, bring that in-house? Like, what is facilitating that change? I imagine that's a difficult position to fill, so I'm curious about that.
Very good question. To Senator Nguyen, Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson, we have had 2 different contract outside counsel working on this, and I think those contracts have been there a while, since maybe since Attorney General Frank UC Del Papa was in office, I believe. So they're legacy contracts with legacy firms doing this work, and we have indication from one of them that they are looking to move out of this line of work. I don't know that I want to. They have indicated that they will be not doing this work, and they've been forthcoming with us in terms of wanting to plan for this transition. So they thankfully started talking to us very early, about 6 months ago, to say there's going to be a change in this landscape, and working with our division to say, what could we do? Does this mean that we do another contract? Does this mean that we keep these outside contracts going? And the decision was made, I think we have a consensus across the board that bringing this in-house makes the most sense.
Do you have some concerns? I mean, it seems like, I don't know, but I imagine the fact that it's been such a long-term contract. Do you have concerns that you're going to have a hard time filling that in-house with such a specialized area of knowledge? I can't imagine there's a ton of attorneys that do this.
So to Senator Nguyen, Chief Benitez Thompson, for the response, if you want to make sure we fill it, you can make it a special counsel position, and I'll have it filled within a month of posting for sure. Not wanting to be too egregious or too bold, we believe we can fill it with a senior deputy attorney general position. We believe that there is an attorney out there who will want to do this work and who can engage in this work. Ideally, we get someone who comes in and really likes it, and we just have a person who's engaged in this work for the rest of their career. We've been really lucky within our office to have certain attorneys who just love the work they do, like the habeas work, and that's all they want to do. And they're going to be there, and they're wonderful at what they do. And I'm so thankful we have them. And we do have some folks like that, where when you get to some of these niche areas of law, these niche areas of law, if we can find someone and get them to stay, that's absolutely our goal.
There's always attorney nerds out there, right? Can I ask you, just in line with the funding source for this, can you describe what the thinking was? The funding source for that new unclassified senior DAG position is recommended to be funded through the Attorney General Cost Allocation Plan. And historically, the nuclear waste litigation contracts have been funded with general fund appropriations. So can you kind of describe what the difference is in the funding mechanism for that position?
Yes, to Senator Nguyen, Chief Benitez Thompson, for the response. Nearly all of our attorney positions are funded through the AG cost allocation plan. There's 100 different agencies that pay into that. Those allocations are set by Department of Administration in terms of the actual rates, but we provide the data on client hours served. They look at an average of 3 years and come up with what that AG cost assessment will be. So the move to the AG cap is just in line with the majority, almost the vast majority. We have only a handful that are not. The vast majority of positions that are funded through the traditional way that the office is funded within AG cap. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Hoban because I think we might have a little bit of a budget savings. We looked very closely at the trade-off from outside counsel to bring it in-house in terms of numbers.
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer for the Office of the Attorney General. Just to dovetail on Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson comments, there are 2 other items that were in consideration for this proposal, and what she just referenced was a net cost savings to the state in general by adding a Senior Deputy Attorney General level position to our office. It does cost less than the current contractor that has communicated that they would no longer be performing these services. So there's a net savings there. Additionally, it is budget account 1031 that has funded these nuclear litigation contract positions. Going back to recent history instead of where it began, recent history within the past decade, there was a cost sharing between general fund and specific settlement dollars. Those settlement dollars have been depleted and are no longer available. So also moving this position not only organizationally into budget account 1030 and funding it the same way as similar positions in that division within our office, it also helps cover it provides another additional funding source that can help offset some of the general fund obligations by allowing us to fund the position as part of the AG cost allocation plan.
Thank you. And Chair, may I ask one other additional question? Thank you for that explanation. I think it goes a lot to clarify some of these positions. I'm kind of jumping some topics now to the need for an additional DAG due to the increasing caseload and kind of the disturbing number of homicides at NDOC. So it looks like between 2022 and the preparation of this budget, I think, in the end of 2024, it looks like there's been 6 homicide cases at NDOC. Can you provide specific details concerning the increase in the number of homicide cases that justify the new position? What exactly would that position just be to deal with the sheer number of murders taking place in a prison population?
Thank you so much to Senator Wynn, Teresa Benitez Thompson, Chief of Staff to AG Ford. So we imagine that this new, these new positions will allow us to have a dedicated caseload of attorney who can spend their time on these more complex cases. And not have them split with the other matters that the office is handling. And so I might phrase it a little bit differently, but I think you've captured the intent well, which is we need to be able to dedicate more resources to those types of cases that are coming to us from NDOC.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you so much for the questions. Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. So the first one is going to be on Decision Unit E300 about the legal researcher for the Post-Convictions Division. I might have missed this, but is there an optimal ratio of legal researchers to DAGs for this division specifically?
Thank you so much to Assemblymember Watts, Teresa Benitez Thompson. There's not a ratio. There is not, I don't even believe, like nationally or by professional standard, a ratio that we could cite to you. This was really built more on our specific needs. The post-conviction division is typically always in appellate courts, right? So they're handling any, once these, okay, you're shaking your head at me. So they're very research heavy. A lot of these cases might have a 20-year history attached to them. They might have, and within the course of that 20 years, lots of different types of cases happening with that one individual. And so the research is very extensive for these cases.
Thank you. So essentially, it's not necessarily a ratio, but it's just workload. And so the existing kind of research team is essentially at its limit and their additional help is needed. Is that kind of how you determine the need for the additional position?
That's correct. Assemblyman Watts, Chief Benitez Thompson, yes. There's not a ratio to point to. If there were a ratio, we would have a lot more legal researchers in the Office of Attorney General, and some of our divisions don't need a legal researcher, but this is one where, as the casework has grown, they need help in order to keep up with not having to ask for so many extensions and get them done more timely. I can get you a more exhaustive list. This is one department that I can get you a more exhaustive list of where the hours would be put or if they're going to be put on a specific type of case. But it's a very busy division.
Thank you for that. I'll jump into my next kind of ratio related question. So that's in E302. I know you discussed the ratio of legal secretaries to DAGs on this item. I just had a clarifying question. So I believe we've got 8 new proposed DAGs and senior DAGs here before us. And so does that ratio and what's being proposed here, does that account for those newly proposed positions?
Correct, yes. Assemblymember Watts, Chief Benitez Thompson, for the record. So it does, and that would be something for consideration that when we were looking at the request and what we wanted to move forward in terms of the new attorney positions, that next came the discussion about support staff, and that would be the support staff that would be needed in terms of legal secretaries and supervising legal secretaries to make sure that we didn't exacerbate the deficit of legal secretaries to attorneys, and that we could keep really closer to the status quo of our ratio that we have right now.
Thank you for that. And so if there was any change in the total amount that's approved, we would want to look at essentially both sides of that.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to ask a question about E301. And if you could just talk a little bit more about the workload increase in the accounting unit, and yeah, how that's being addressed currently, and then how that transitions into the request for the new management analyst and the accounting assistant.
Okay. For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer for the Office of the Attorney General. To Assemblymember Watts, thank you for the question. Very happy to address this one. So this one is almost like one side of what we're looking at is kind of a ratio to other state agencies' fiscal unit staffs. So I've worked at a few different agencies in my career with the state, so I've gained experience through that as to a budget account and staffing workload ratio per se. So, for example, other agencies that I have worked at generally have budget management staff that are assigned anywhere from 2 to 4 budget accounts just for the budget management piece. At our agency, we're at 4 to 6. And because of the limitations of the staff that we have, we're even using staff titles that are not in the same title range to help cover some of the shortfall with the budget management piece. If we were to stick with just the position titles that we have, we would actually have closer to a 7 to 10 ratio per staff member just for budget management piece. Also looking at the accounting operations, so accounts payable, accounts receivable, there's generally a staffing ratio that is about 2 budget accounts per position. We have 23 budget accounts. Our accounting unit within the fiscal division is responsible for managing 20 of those, and we only have 3 staff. So that comparison to other state agencies, instead of having 1 staff member for the accounting functions for every 2 budget accounts, we have 3 staff managing 20, which is almost 7 budget accounts for the accounting assistant level staff. So that is the basic premise for that. If you want to talk about workload specifically, we have not had any additional positions added to the accounting unit there was one that was added, but then due to some budgetary cuts, it was removed. So we're at a net same budget count as we have been in this office for more than a decade. And some things that have changed within that time frame are not only do we have additional budget accounts that we're managing compared to 10 years ago, but we also have additional workload associated with payments, processing, and tracking that kind of correlate with the opioid litigation that Attorney General Ford was talking about earlier, as well as just caseload in general. The more cases that we have, there's more work that has to be done on the fiscal side in bringing in revenue. We are actually quite heavy on the revenue side compared to the average state agency, and that is not accounted for in my staffing ratio. But the more cases that we have, the more litigation we go through, the more recoveries, the more restitution that we have, it just adds more accounting work.
Thank you. That was a great response. And I have just a couple more questions. And you mentioned some of the recoveries. And first of all, I just want to applaud your office for the work that you do to hold folks accountable, but also to help bring in resources to the state and address those issues and meet critical needs for Nevadans. So on that note, looking at E303, adding the new Senior Deputy Attorney General in the Complex Litigation Division, can you just discuss how they will help in the management of high-value cases and, if possible, give us any thoughts on the expected impact on the tort claim fund as a result?
Thank you so much for the question, Assemblymember Watts, Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson. The quantity of cases is not necessarily so impressive as the complexity of cases coming in. A good example would be Coyote Springs ones. We've had a couple of these cases coming in where the potential damages to the states, hundreds of $millions and billions of dollars being asked for by the plaintiff. So they require just an extra level of diligence and assurance. We have to be right on these, otherwise we're going to feel it in our pocketbook.
Thank you. And then my last question is on E304, to add the administrative assistant in the constituent services unit. And I think you did touch on this, but can you just discuss how adding that position will improve response times and address the increase in public complaints?
Yes, to Assemblymember Watts from Chief Benitez Thompson. What I could provide to you, which I think might be helpful, is the unit provides quarterly reports on the number of calls coming in, also the type of calls coming in, and I'm happy to provide, I think I could give you like the last year's worth of reports, and it's going to give you an incredible amount of detail in terms of what you're seeing in terms of volume, and then also how those calls are referred out and handled by the office once they're received.
Thank you. That would be great if you could get that to our staff, and then if you can also just get us some information on how adding this position will assist in those responses.
Thank you so much. If I could, Madam Chairwoman, Assemblymember Watts asked a really good question about the legal researchers, and I felt like I was inarticulate. I'm an operations person. I am not an attorney, but I do have the supervisor over criminal prosecutions divisions here and our Assistant Attorney General, C.J. Brady, and I thought maybe for the number of attorneys we have on here, talking a little bit more specifically about the discovery work that they do, and it might be a better response and I think better answer the question than what I provided.
That would be great if they want to come up to the table. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Monroe Morena. Christine Jones Brady for the record, and to Assemblyman Watts. So for the legal researchers, just to elaborate on that a little bit, it's not so much, and I don't know that you're thinking that they're doing this, but they're doing more than researching. They're not so much researching legal issues, but for the post-conviction division, they are dealing with cases that were litigated probably sometimes between 15 to 30 years ago. And it's the appeal upon the appeal upon the appeal. They're dealing with the record from the trial. If there was a retrial, they're dealing with all of that. They're dealing with the record from the state level post-conviction and the appeal. And so what those legal researchers are often doing is not just researching legal issues, they're actually organizing the binders, processing the tens and thousands of documents from the lower court cases and the number of cases that are coming through for the federal courts. It kind of ebbs and flows, but they're mostly working in the federal court level for the federal post-conviction cases. They also have death penalty cases, which are very intricate in terms of going through, looking at records, processing that, sometimes looking at other, trying to find the evidence, because sometimes records have been lost and they have to research to the courts and, where is all of this documentation? So it's extremely intricate and detailed and voluminous in terms of the work they're doing. And right now, there's one person, and if that person is out on leave for some reason, for example, because people are human beings, then they're backlogged, and the federal courts are not super forgiving about, granting extensions. May I say something about that? There was another question about that.
And while you're working on that, I'll just say thank you. I appreciate that additional information and definitely understand the significant complexity and expense involved, particularly with capital cases. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm sad that I missed your presentation, but I'm sure it was well done. But I did have a question regarding current vacancy rates, specifically with DAG and senior DAGs.
Thank you so much for the question to Assemblymember Bacchus from Chief Benitez Thompson. We can provide that to you. I could actually get you like a 6-month look back if you want to be a little bit more impressed by the impact of the COLAs, we could provide you what those look like since those COLAs went to effect. Before the COLA, so last session starting off, we were in about 20% vacancy, so certainly not as poorly situated as some other agencies that were having like 40%, 30% vacancy, but we were at about 20%, and that's come down. I want to say overall we're closer to 6%, 5-6%, but we can let you know what that trend has looked like over the past 6 months.
If that information is also readily available with like legal assistance, I recall last session, that was a real struggle. We were able to
Correct.
address grades, but I would defer to the chair to permit you to provide such information to us.
Correct. We have a vacancy report that our wonderful HR staff provides. I think about every 2 weeks I get a vacancy report, something we watch very closely. We do not like to let positions sit around. That doesn't happen. We need them filled and working all the time.
Yes, if you could provide that to our staff, they can get that information to all the members. That would be great. Any follow-up? No. All right. Then we'll go on to Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm going to move over to E305, the Department of Taxation and the possibility of what's going on right now with that possible new attorney. So doing a little bit of research and some of the other background information, pursuant to one of the NRS statutes, 228, it appears that there's a little bit of a difference of opinion sometimes, because has the Attorney General determined that his office is disqualified, or it's, I guess, uneconomical to represent the Department of Taxation based upon that language? In other words, I'm just trying to figure out if the justification that the department is coming to us is actually warranted.
Thank you so much to Assemblyman Anderson. Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson, I think I heard in the question, have we done the analysis to say that it's uneconomical, unpracticable in order to fill those? We have not. Attorney General Ford is of the mindset that 288.110 should be read exactly as it states, that the Office of Attorney General is the legal office for the state of Nevada and the legal voice for the state of Nevada. We would stand in opposition to any new statute changes that would take people outside of that. In terms of uneconomical, we would have to look where there are agencies that have agency attorneys within them. There's a handful of them. It's not quite extensive. We kind of went searching for them when there were conversations about the classification and compensation study. There was kind of this big question, how many attorneys are there in the state? And it was actually harder to find out than we thought. So we went looking to identify some of them. There's a very clear understanding between our office in terms of delegation of work of what we cover and what they cover, and what the legal tasks that we are the lead on and the legal tasks that they're the lead on. They're mostly internal to the agency itself, but if it's anything that's going to walk through the door of a court, it is us. We are the attorneys of record for the state, and we see no reason why that should change.
Follow up, if I may? Go ahead. Thanks. So with that, I mean, it sounds like there's some good conversations going on, but let's just say that it does actually, that idea to add 2 general counsel positions is actually approved. Would you still need that senior deputy attorney general position, or would that be something that you would continue to have the discussions about?
Thank you to Assemblyman Anderson, Chief Benitez Thompson. So the amount of work that is needed for taxation, I don't believe is in dispute by either Department of Taxation or us. If an agency is telling you they need more legal representation, it's valid. Like I said on the record, the size of that, the attorneys, which are 5 of them, 4 DAGs and 1 senior DAG that work on tax matters, are the same quantity that's been there since 2005, despite new statutes in place, despite the growth in audits being conducted and all of the excise staff or at the excise work they do and everything like that, advisory opinions that they do. What I have asked the Department of Taxation to engage in is a more robust and really brass tacks conversation about what they see as the delegation of the work if they got attorneys. Our analysis would be, right now there's only very few general counsel positions throughout the state. And she has a general counsel, you guys have a general counsel, PUC has a general counsel, their judicial discipline has a general counsel. But other than that, they really should be out there judiciously, right? And I think Assemblymember Bacchus asked really great questions in the subcommittee to the department around some of the conflicts that might happen when you have a general counsel to the board, an agency that responds to the board, and you have a general counsel that's primarily responsible to the board, but then work to the agency. But if that work to the agency gets disputed and it goes before the board, then they're conflicted out. And then you're right there at outside counsel, and then we're running up the tab, right? So I think we haven't done a thorough analysis, but I think there's some really good questions like that have to be answered. I hope to come back to you very soon with help for both of us to come back to you very soon with a good plan.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing you say then is there has been discussions about how the divide of duties would be, but those are only discussions at this time, and that hopefully you'll be able to come to this body within like a little bit more of a more robust explanation as to how those job items would be distributed if these positions were approved. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, Assemblymember Anderson, we are very much in a let's have a conversation mode. I would have preferred to have a more robust conversation, like let's say at the beginning of the budget build versus right now, but I know how things go. Everyone's busy, so we'll get to it.
Thank you. And I just have one more question, but it's on a different accounting. It's on E307, IT, which is always everybody's favorite. So how is the IT division currently providing desktop support for systems and network operations without the proposed IT technician or the business process analysis? Or are you doing what I do, which is just unplug and plug it back in?
So for the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer for the Office of the Attorney General. As far as Decision Unit E307, the business process analyst, as we had mentioned, that's for implementation, maintenance, things like that associated with the systems that we operate at the Office of the Attorney General. Looking back, I think it is Decision Unit 311, I think is the one where we were talking about the pro-law system. Yes, Decision Unit E311, that's our pro-law system is going to be, we're proposing an upgrade to that system. We're operating on a version that is several years old. The system itself can't keep up with the workload that we have. So this is just one example. The pro-law system upgrade that we're talking about, we need someone who can oversee the implementation of the upgrade, make sure that everything is functioning properly, make sure that with the transition to a newer system, that maybe some of the methods or processes that we've been using in the past, if they're no longer current technology, there may have to be a change in the structure or the type of documents or how the system is used. Another example, when we're talking about the constituent services unit, that's also a system that is needing constant upgrade or modifications that are done in-house by our IT staff, which every time that they have to do a modification to that internal system, there's another job duty that they're not able to do. And then, as Chief of Staff Thompson had mentioned, the new victim notification system that we're looking at, that's also going to require more work and support for our current IT staff to handle. And then the desktop staff for the IT technician 6. That is just to kind of stay on top of our current position count. We do now have, everyone has more staff back in the office now, and that relates to additional need to have more staff on site to cover the positions. Additionally, we're asking for more positions now as well, but we have had several positions added over the past 5 to 6 years also, without any additional IT staff to support those.
And I could add real quickly if I know it's getting late in the morning, and we still have budgets to go through real quickly on that, but I will provide more information to you and to staff because, Teresa Benitez Thompson for the record, to Assemblymember Anderson, because we work under the statutory umbrella of OCIO, but in terms of security building and securing our network and securing our data and building firewalls around it, there's been a lot more work over the past 2 years. So a lot more of those assignments falling on our staff, our in-house IT staff. We are always coordinating, have those conversations with OCIO, but a good example would be we moved all of our servers over to Switch in the past 2 years. And so that was a big undertaking and very important for the security. We've had to set up additional walls around our data to ensure that there's never compromise in our investigation system. So a lot of this has been security driven, a lot of them coming from responses to and work with CISA that we've done at the federal level when we asked for an audit of our system. And so I'll get you a little bit more detail on some of the new obligations that we have to keep up with that security work as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you for offering to get that information to staff. I think next up we have Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. And 3 questions, please, Chair.
That'll be fine.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for answering all these questions today. I'll start with E308, the need for the additional Senior Deputy Attorney General to assist the Department of Corrections. And you did talk about the need because of the additional caseloads. But could you also talk about what's happening with the contract reviews and public records requests, if there are more of those, and if that supports the need for that position?
Correct. To Assemblywoman Mosca, Assemblymember Mosca, Teresa Benitez Thompson, Chief of Staff. So E308, this is where we represent the client, who is the Department of Corrections. So this is separate, and obviously the firewall between the work they do and some of the other stuff we've been talking with Department of Corrections. So more and more the client has asked for increased help in reviewing contracts, which are higher dollar contracts. So in terms of being more volume of contracts, more complexity in those contracts as well. We're also getting asked for a lot more help with them in public records requests. And so that leads to additional hours on top of the legal work as well. And then just, of course, ever-growing litigation coming from the Department of Corrections as well. We can quantify more. We can send you over case numbers. The case numbers in this are always quite impressive, but we're happy to share more in terms of quantifying some of that for you.
Thank you. Yes, I think that will be really helpful. And for E309, I know that you also did discuss AB 58 of the 81st legislative session for this one, but could you describe the specific qualifications and expertise that's required by the compliance investigators and administrative assistant positions to carry this work out?
Thank you so much to Assemblymember Mosca, Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez Thompson for the response. And this is within the decision unit is about our patterns and practice, where we're asking for the 2 compliance investigators and administrative assistants. So we have opened up and been welcoming into the office referrals. And right now we have 1 attorney that is covering all of that work from beginning end, and it is just not an expeditious way to move through and to do this work. And so the administrative assistants can be the ones helping to review those referrals coming in, reading them and understanding them, and just the management of the paperwork coming in, and then the investigator, so that the attorney doesn't have to do that function because it's not proper for them to do that in terms of investigating those referrals that are coming in.
And I'm sorry if I didn't say specifically, but could you discuss what the qualifications and expertise are of those? It makes sense that you need more of
Like
them.
why it's an administrative assistant or a criminal investigator, or which one? Oh, compliance investigator. Sorry, compliance investigator. Yeah. So we have different types of investigators within our office. We have criminal investigators, which is the title that I just misspoke to. So compliance investigator is not quite to the same level as the criminal investigator. They're not sworn peace officers. Our other investigators are Category 2 sworn peace officers. We don't need a sworn peace officer to engage in this work, but we do need someone who's looking at compliance in terms of rules, regulations, laws, and being able to sift through paperwork with that specific lens, but we don't need them to be a licensed Category 2 investigators.
Thank you so much. And last question for me. Based on the information provided, the 24 new positions are recommended to be located in Carson City in a leased space. Does the current state-owned space located in Carson City have enough capacity to facilitate these new positions? Thank you.
Assemblymember Mosca, so Teresa Benitez-Thompson for the record. So in reality, we will post for these positions statewide. We have an office in Reno. We have an office in Carson City. We have an office in Vegas. Our office in Vegas, staff-wise, is the largest office with about 200 employees there in our beautiful brand-new building that y'all gave us last session. Thank you so much. And so we will recruit for them statewide and get them where we need them. Many of our chiefs in our office are used to supervising staff across 3 different locations. And so while it says Carson City, when we kind of do the back build of attributing where the employee actually lives to like paying for square footage of rent and all those other allocations, we'll adjust it in our budget.
Thank you, and thank you for that question. That was going to be one of mine, why all of them in Carson City with the beautiful building down south. But I'd like to kind of go into a different direction with the position conversions, the reclassifications, and specifically the chief investigator of E320. That state position has been vacant since March of 2020, and it's been filled by a contract position. But if you look at the governor's recommendation to reduce the salary of the existing unclassified chief investigator's position down to just the $1, concerning to me, because if the contract chief investigator position is then vacated in the future, do you think your office would anticipate replacing that position with another contract position, or would you replace it with a state employee? And then how would we do that if the salary is reduced so low?
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. This current request and the time frame that you're seeing for the actual position control number being vacated is kind of a carryover from some of the complex issues that we've had with staffing in the past. The current chief of investigations was appointed by Attorney General Ford, and when this person was appointed to this position, the position number that has been vacant was actually paid at a lower rate than their subordinate staff. And so that added additional complexity with getting the position filled. We were having a difficult time filling it, and the candidates that we did find were former retired law enforcement from local jurisdictions. So Attorney General Ford selected the person who is in the position now, and agreed to accept the position as a contractor. Since last session, where we have had some of the COLA increases and have leveled out the pay parity, not only amongst investigators in other agencies, but also investigators within our office, we do think that in the future, if it is vacant, we would definitely pursue filling the position, the state authorized position title, before we would look at doing the contractor. The contractor was from some of the deficits that we had in the pay structure in the past. And I do believe that Attorney General Ford, as well as the person who is in the position of chief investigator right now, are committed to finishing out Attorney General Ford's term in that position.
Thank you for that. So in knowing that the current person in that position may not remain when Attorney General Ford is not there, with the salary structure being changed, and it's converting the unclassified chief's position to the contract position, if you want to bring that person back on as a state employee, then how would we fund that position with the changes that were made with the salary? It looks like at $1 and they adjusted.
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. I'm not sure if this actually answers the question you're asking, but as a comparable, I can tell you what we have done in the past is that the position was funded through the position control number, and then we would come back to this body during the interim through an IFC work program to move the authorized funding for the position to an operational category, which pays for the contract. I don't know if that is an option at this point that may help kind of resolve some of the questions that I'm hearing.
It does. So it would be in our best interest to make sure that the salary was there in the budget. So if that position needed to be filled, that money would have already been budgeted for, and then you come before IFC to make that request.
Thank you so much. So, Chairman Moreno, are you like hold it, kind of set it to the side and fence it off, and then if we needed to come back and do that instead of plunk it right in? Okay, yeah.
Thank you. All right, I think we have one other question, and that will be Assembly Member Torres Fawcett.
Thank you. I started us with questions, and then I'm going to end us with questions. I'm excited. Could you please provide an update on the status of the Attorney General cost allocation plan, and what is the anticipated time frame for receiving the completed plans from the vendor to allow for the updating of paying agency budget accounts for fiscal year 2026 and 27?
Yes, Assemblymember Fawcett, I'll have Chief Hoban speak to that, but that's a very important question, and yeah, we would not be doing our due diligence if we didn't live with something on the record about that.
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. We are working with the Governor's Finance Office, who owns the contract for the cost allocation vendor. As you may or may not know, there was a transition to a different vendor just in the past couple of months. I was even working with the vendor yesterday for some time. It is our understanding that it is a 4 to 6 week process at this point, but we are anticipating to have the final numbers by the end of March, beginning of April is the time frame we're looking at now. It may be sooner, but that's the time frame that we're looking at from the vendor.
And we do have another question, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and good to see you there at the table, Chief. I'm a little disappointed that the Attorney General had to leave. I know he's very busy because we had some questions for him, but I know you folks can handle these, and if not, you'll get back to us. So during the budget presentation, specifically on page 5, when you went over all the legal staff and the additional 6 new attorneys from E25 through E308, I didn't see, and I know the Attorney General mentioned the pharmaceutical suits, and then he probably mentioned suing the federal government. You didn't ask for any new positions to do specifically the federal government suits, and I'm wondering how many DAGs are tied up in the cost of getting involved in those kind of efforts that he is putting forth.
Thank you so much for the question, Senator Titus. First and foremost, happy birthday. I'm glad you're celebrating another trip around the sun, 39 years, coming to this table with such seasoned experience. Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson, for the record, thank you for asking the question. Most of that work is done by the Solicitor General's office, and it's good and important work to engage in, we believe.
I appreciate that. And because this body has asked previous offices the same question, like our Lieutenant Governor, whether he was doing things outside of his scope, and we want to make sure that we hold all offices accountable and it can be directly related to benefits of Nevadans specifically. So no AG staff is tied up for that. It's the Solicitor General's office.
To Senator Titus, Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez Thompson, the Solicitor General's office is a division within the Office of Attorney General. Specifically, it was created during the Laxalt administration. But those are the attorneys that do the work in terms of that type of engagement. Solicitor General's office typically does the appellate federal work that the state of Nevada needs to engage in.
Thank you for that. And follow-up question, if I might, Madam Chair. So also, I'm happy to see more investigations. There's the fraud, abuse investigations that your office does is, I think, critical. And in my rural area, we recently had huge issue. You know what I'm going to bring up, the $9 million that was given to a solar company that then for a rural internet, and it's just disappeared. So can you give me any updates on, will this new investigation, will any of these positions help with those type of investigations?
Thank you so much. So to Senator Titus, Chief Benitez Thompson, for the record. So the Uprise issue is absolutely at the top of our mind. It is, we get asked about it daily, and as soon as we're able to communicate with you more about that, we absolutely will. We know everyone's looking for a response on this, especially people who represent the rural areas. So just as soon as we can share something with you, we will. Your second part of your question was about investigators.
Correct. I just didn't know if that would help maybe solve some of these issues or get on some of these issues quicker. It's truly, hopefully these folks can be deployed to get things done for Nevadans quicker. I mean, the Attorney General mentioned solving the Walmart situation, and somehow they got $2 million out of it, which is a shock to me. But those type of things, I mean, this is a bigger issue in my mind than what Walmart charges. And so I just want to know where the energy is being spent.
So within if you want to know about our investigations work specifically, so we do provide within our biennial report, which you can find on our website, but I'm more than happy to get you a copy. The last 2 pages are reports from our investigators on our investigation work and the type of crimes that we engage in. So the quantity of crimes and then kind of what happens through those crimes. So you can see that report there. In the specific budget build, we do not have a request for new criminal investigators. If you want to give them to me, I'll take them. We could always do more work. I mean, we could always do more work. And that's one of those things that as an office, when we do our internal review of needs and what needs we have, we know that we can work with other law enforcement agencies and often do. And then the biggest question obviously has been in the lack of attorneys to move forward with the cases from there. So we've prioritized the budget as is right now, but if you'd like to have more of a conversation outside of just that one case about other things as well, we're happy to have a conversation.
Great, I appreciate that. I think it's important. I know that our federal government is trying to hold folks accountable. We're looking at fraud and abuse, and I want to make sure our state is holding people accountable looking at fraud and abuse. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the birthday wishes.
Thank you. There are a few more questions. We're going to go to Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive budget presentation. And it's just been an honor to work on the Surge Committee and see all the opiate settlement monies go to so many important programs in the state. But what I want to talk about real quickly is the public records request. According to the Nevada Independent, your office repeatedly has delayed or stalled public records requests despite all the other constitutional officers providing
Mr. Stone.
similar information.
Senator Stone.
Is your,
Senator Stone, I'd like to remind you that this is a fiscal
Yes.
committee meeting.
Yes.
So do you have a question
Yes.
about their budget?
yes, yes. Is your office requesting additional funds to better comply with the public records request despite other agencies having no issues?
Thank you so much. So to Senator Stone from Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez-Thompson. So thank you for acknowledging the article that came out, I believe it was now just about a year ago. Public records requests, the type of records requests we get into our office, we have to sort through, and we have to have, unlike other offices, they don't necessarily have attorneys review all of the records that are going out. We have to have that function. So our general counsel has to review and review the documents that are going out, make sure we don't have personal information in there, make sure that sensitive case information is in there. There has to be more of a thorough review, so that takes a little bit more time. That being said, though, we had an internal conversation and about where we could speed up time and get more support. So it feels like there's been a course correction. A lot of the public records requests that come in, and I wouldn't say that we're the only agency. I think you could Google public records and find across many agencies that it's not an easy task to tackle. That being said, AG Ford absolutely believes in transparency, absolutely believes in being responsive to the public, and we're an open book, so we send out as much as we can whenever we get the request to do so.
The additional DAGs and the additional
You need a
researchers
follow-up?
might enhance that, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Do you think the hiring of the additional DAGs and researchers might help expedite some of those public requests?
Thank you for the question, Senator Stone. So as we've built the budget, the specific justifications you see in front of you are for the needs that we've talked about. We did not have a request for additional support specific to responses for public records at this time. We believe we have a course correction and are producing those in the manner that's expected by the public.
Thank you.
Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to steal the speaker's line of questioning, and he's given me full permission to do this. But we at every budget are obviously concerned with some of the federal cuts that have been proposed. And so I just wanted to touch on what it is that your office has seen and what your office is looking at potential cuts. And recently, maybe you could touch on the article that came out that said that you guys were encouraging people to possibly violate federal law and whether or not that was going to cause any kind of backlash for us to get reduced funding for your office.
To Assemblymember Hafen, Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez-Thompson, at no point have we directed anyone to violate federal law. That would be contrary to the Office of Attorney General and contrary to the oath that AG Ford has taken. So if you have something, perhaps you misread the press release, I don't know which one you're speaking to or statements, but can you be more direct about what you mean?
I'm glad to know that the article was, so I appreciate you clarifying that. But could you just also touch on
thank you.
the federal
Okay.
funding portion of the questions?
I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that that didn't stand. So Chief of Staff to Member Hafen. So direct impact, our office administers about $13 million in grants. It'll ebb and flow from $9 million in grants to $13 million in grants, depending when a grant is beginning and ending. So if, for example, the executive order, or sorry, not the executive order, the memo by the Office of Budget Management stood a couple weeks back to turn off the flow of federal dollars and grants and awards at 5 o'clock on that Tuesday, then we would have had to stop paying out to our grantees. Most of that being work to support domestic violence work in the rurals. For example, the Committee on Domestic Violence in Winnemucca, Committee on Domestic Violence in Elko, the sexual assault support that we provide provide out to the communities, including rural communities. AG Ford was so concerned of that we dropped everything and did a rural tour out to visit those grant partners along the I-80 corridor to ask about what would happen if these federal funds stopped coming in. What would that impact be, and how would your communities survive without these dollars? And the answer is not well, right? The bigger picture of it is that the office has engaged in the lawsuits where we see unconstitutional actions by the federal government. AG Ford has engaged on that. So we were part of the lawsuit with Rhode Island and other attorney generals in order to request a temporary restraining order against the Office of Budget Management so that indeed they could not stop and hold up those federal funds. We've been back in court in order to enforce the ruling that we won in that temporary restraining order that we won. You guys all know, because it's been a topic of conversation, our state budget and our programs and our operations are dependent on those federal dollars and awards, and we'll absolutely be in a devastating position if they don't come through. As well, we got a new award awarded to our office in partnership with the Las Vegas Metro Police Department on a new cyber crimes award. And that week that the Office of Budget Management was rolling out their conversation, the subsequent week was when we were sending people out for training to DC on this cyber crimes award, and they called it off. We hope it gets rescheduled, but work like that is the work that's going to be impacted. Also, too, I think from the fiscal staff perspective is in the past years, right? Some of us being here and legislating, we've legislated through recessions. We've legislated through federal funding freezes. The time that we have to pivot as a state to consider if we're going to have to make cuts, where we make cuts, that's been a weeks or months discussion. I think some of the panic that you saw that we certainly felt from state agencies and across the state was fiscal staff were waking up, seeing that dollars were potentially going to be turned off, and they had 6 to 8 hours to figure out what to do and how to respond. And there wasn't a conversation about how do we fill these dollars anywhere else, right? So we feel that engaging in that work to protect Nevada and protect Nevada's interest is very important. AG Ford's adamant about it.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. And that looks like it's the last question on that budget, but hearing that you went out into, the AG went out into the rules, actually talked to the people who are going to be most impacted by these cuts to hear how it's impacting them is very impressive. So tell him thank you for doing that. And with that, we're going to move on to budget 1002, the extradition coordinator.
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer, Office of the Attorney General. The next budget account that we're going to cover is budget account 1002, which is the extraditions coordinator budget. This budget represents the program that is in compliance with NRS 178.620 through 178.640. It is also a requirement at the federal level to have a statewide extraditions coordinator. Essentially, this program deals with transportation of persons who may have been detained or incarcerated that are not currently in the state of Nevada, but do have warrants out for them in the state of Nevada. So this account covers the transports of those people to stand trial in the state for the crimes that they have warrants for in the state. This budget account has one primary decision unit. This decision unit is augmenting the amount of the base budget request, and that is to align with the additional costs that we have seen over the past few years. Primarily, costs started increasing at the beginning of the pandemic. During that time frame, prisoners who were being transported were not allowed to move into a prison population of another state or another local entity throughout the time of their transport. This is one item that has not changed since the impacts of the pandemic have been decreasing and getting back to business as usual. With the extraditions, they haven't gone back to the method that we previously introduced, where you would have, 10 or more individuals in one vehicle with 2 drivers driving across the country for a week or more at a time, where they would have to stop into different detention facilities. So previously, when we were using that method of transport, the amounts that were being paid were per mile, essentially, and then some additional administrative costs for a vendor. But since the beginning of the pandemic, and currently continuing now, a lot of these transports are occurring via airline, in which case you have one person being transported and either 1 or 2 officers accompanying them. It makes for a much shorter time frame, and one thing that is a bit difficult for us to quantify financially is, with a shorter amount of time, what the potential savings for liability to the state would be. So we don't have that information, but we do believe that it does save on liability, simply because the person being transported is in our custody for a shorter period of time, or in a local jurisdiction's custody. Most of the transports that we do are through local jurisdictions. We reimburse them for the extraditions costs that they impose. If they're doing an in-state transport, that is outside of this program. These are only interstate transports. One of the other things that was discontinued during the pandemic was the Northwest Shuttle, which is kind of a cooperative of law enforcement agencies in a majority of the states, but not all states throughout the country, where you would have law enforcement agents transport a person for a certain distance, and then they would hand them off to the subsequent law enforcement agents. So the cooperative agreement there is, if you have, say, someone that needs to be transported is in Oregon, we need to bring them back to Nevada, but Nevada, or somewhere in between Oregon and Nevada, also has someone that needs to be transported back to Oregon. It's this cooperative agreement where you can get the people you need to the locations where they need to go, and it is a pretty large cost savings, because you're using existing law enforcement officers to do the transport in different legs. When the pandemic came about, they discontinued that as well, and they have just started getting back up to speed over the last, it was probably about 1.5 years ago, they were trying to get the Northwest Shuttle back up and running. It was limited, though, because different states still had different restrictions. At this point in time, they are now starting to be able to fulfill the same locations that they used to fulfill. So we are hoping that if we are able to get more local jurisdictions to participate in that, Washoe County has been doing it for many years, and they have a very successful program doing that. So we're also trying to get other local jurisdictions to participate as well. But when that is not available, when the Northwest Shuttle is not available, or we have an agency that is not able to participate, or depending on the timeframes for the hearings, also potentially the types of cases that the person has a warrant out for, we are going to still continue using airfare. We are also looking at getting another state contract. We have been without a state contractor since about 1 year into the beginning of the pandemic. There was a bill that was passed last session that helps remove some of the restrictions that we were having struggles with. And we are also broadening our perspective on the proposed contract. We're going to be looking for multiple different vendors who may be able to provide different services and also provide potential cost savings by having multiple options. So regardless, there is still an additional cost to extraditions, and that is what Decision Unit E275 represents, is a trend that we have seen, and we have smoothed it with using I believe, a 5-year average, so that if some costs had peaked, it's being smoothed. But last session, and I believe the previous session as well, the cost had increased significantly to the point that we had fully depleted both years of the biennium before the biennium had ended. The same thing is happening this year, so I will mention that we have been working with the Governor's Finance Office, and you will hopefully likely be seeing a supplemental appropriation bill coming up soon, so that we can cover the additional costs that were incurred in the current biennium as well. And then for the next biennium, we have this decision unit to hopefully fill that gap that we're seeing, so that we can hopefully reduce having to move funds from the second year of the biennium into the first year, and then coming back to you next session asking for yet another supplemental appropriation. We're hoping that this augmentation, if approved, will help reduce that moving forward.
Thank you for that explanation. And for someone whose career was in law enforcement, the driving a suspect back is so much more dangerous for the officer and the suspect. So using the flights, shorter trips, less hotel rooms and things, much better for us as a state. I'm going to go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think I would agree, as we were having some conversations about this, but and I think some of this you have addressed, but I want to make sure we sort of have it straight when it comes to this request in terms of extradition. I think you've given us a good update on extradition transports, but can you talk to us about the status of those and the projected total costs for FY 2025?
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. At the moment, well, when I say at the moment, this is beginning of February, so just within the past couple of weeks. We did do another analysis for the costs that we had already received requests in fiscal year 25 for extraditions, and we did a projection out. I think at the point that we did this analysis, we had most of the monthly requests from the various local law enforcement agencies that went through December. Some of them had given us January, some of them were, had only given us through October and November, but we use the same methodology that we have used in the past for the work programs where we've requested transfer from year 2 to year 1, so the methodology hasn't changed. The supplemental appropriation, the amount that we're looking at right now is $1,250,690 is what we're looking at to cover our fiscal year 25. And that also includes some stale claims from fiscal year 24 that by the time that we had received the request, we were closing our state fiscal year 24 annual budget. But additionally, because of the process that we go through to transfer the funds, it would have required a meeting of IFC, which we did not have time for by the time that the invoices were received. So within that $1.2 million amount that I just mentioned, $106,718 are actually invoices that are still owed from fiscal year 24. So the supplemental appropriation is requesting to cover both the unpaid amounts from fiscal year 24 as well as the full amount of the requests from the local jurisdictions for fiscal year 25.
Okay. Can you give me that number on the total amount so far for 25?
Total amount for the supplemental appropriation request is $1,250,690.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And that's inclusive of those stale claims?
Yes.
Okay. You've talked to us a little bit about some of the things that led us to these specific factors. Can you just sort of, if there's anything else you want to add to that in terms of specific factors that are causing extradition costs to increase? I know we talked a little bit about some of the COVID pieces and changing the transport methods.
So for the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. We did see a significant increase in, primarily from Clark County. Makes sense because they're the largest populated county in the state. There was a significant increase in the end of fiscal year '23 throughout most of fiscal year '24, where what we have been told is that some of the impacts of the pandemic created a bit of a backlog for them to actually conduct the extraditions and have people appear in a timely manner in compliance with the Constitution for speedy trial. So they were trying to catch up during that statute of limitation period. I'm not an attorney. I hope that's the appropriate phrase. So there was a significant spike there. We have seen just in the past few months that is declining in Clark County, but when I say the past few months, I would say probably the last 6 months, we have seen their numbers drop, but they are just in the past 3 billings that we have received from them, it seems to be leveling out again. It's still not anywhere near the pre-pandemic amounts, but we do believe that spike in their backlog for their caseload, we're hoping that is behind us. At least that's the way that it appears from the dollars that we're seeing.
Okay, so you're already seeing that sort of start to level off and decrease a bit. And so I guess it would make sense, if I can phrase this the right way, you would not anticipate the increase trend to continue. And then would that justify projecting lower than the 1.9 million that was recommended for each year of the biennium, to have that be less since we're seeing that kind of decline? Or are there any other things with that, like specific one-time events that maybe influence that you would anticipate either seeing that increase or decrease?
So for the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for that question. I did bring the amounts for the current biennium. We had approximately $1,230,000 in each year of the biennium. So the increase that we are asking for now is approximately $85,000 each year in the biennium. So this is a significant increase still over what we had in the past, but our projection for that amount was in hopes of having the numbers significantly skewed based on the artificial large spike that we saw. We're happy to run more numbers again, just to see where we're at now, because when the budget was built was, 8 months ago from the agency side. We're happy to refresh those numbers to what we're seeing today and provide them to better answer that question. But a general answer to the question is, because we're seeing the numbers level off, we don't anticipate a significant spike unless there's something unforeseen that comes up.
Okay. So then that would be sort of the justification then for that request? For some reason, I had 1.9 million in each year of the biennium, but I think you said 2. $2.1.
So I will rephrase that.
Okay.
I was looking in the system today, and I may have written down the wrong number. The decision unit request amount is $825,916 to increase our the budget to cover these additional costs for the different types of transports that are occurring now.
Okay, yeah, and we have that as well, so I think we're saying the same thing. That's all, I think that's all I have for right now, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. We can close the discussion on Budget 1002 and move on to our next budget, which would be Budget 1034, the Investigations Unit.
All right, thank you so much. So 1034, so this is the establishment of a new budget account and consolidating the investigations unit staff into one account. So what you see in these decision units are through the different budget accounts that are existing right now, the specific positions that we are going to be pulling over into that new investigations staff budget account. And we're happy to answer questions if you have questions about why we're moving any of these specific positions or why these positions are moving over. It's essentially all of our criminal investigators, but not MFCU or Medicaid fraud unit investigators because they're funded separately through, they're actually like an FMAP match, not State General Fund or AG Cap or anything like that. And then we do have a couple of non-investigator positions, which are just the support positions for those investigators that are already embedded with them right now.
Thank you, and we do have some questions. We're going to start with Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Chair, and good to see you, Chief of Staff. I do have a couple questions, and you just touched on one, which was, in the organizational chart for these positions, we do see 8 additional support positions, and I just wondered if those positions should be included in the centralization of investigations staff to budget account 1034, this investigations unit, or are you recommending that those positions remain where they are now?
Thank you so much to Assemblymember Yeager, Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson. So yes, they should move over, and then what we'll do internally is do like a cost allocation back to our other accounts because they work specifically to support the investigations unit. So if we left them behind in the other budgets, it wouldn't make sense because then the support staff would be in one spot versus the investigation staff be in one spot. So that it makes it a succinct, cleaner accounting for the compensation of the time.
Great, thank you. And Chair, could I ask another question? A very similar question, but it looks like the majority of the recommended transfers do not include the operating costs such as building rent, telephones, email, operating supplies. Should those operating costs related to these positions be included in the transfer decision units, or do you recommend keeping those where they are right now in their current budget accounts?
Thank you so much for the question, Assemblymember Yeager. So we think that they are supposed to be. That was part of our design. So we can double check and work with your staff if it's not showing, if the operations is not showing, then we'd want to correct that.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it is or not, but if you could make sure we get that squared away to the way that you would like it, we'd appreciate it. And thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nguyen?
Kind of along lines with what Speaker Yeager had talked to you about. I'm looking at was a cost allocation considered to fund the proposed investigation unit, especially since you're contemplating consolidating the investigators, where that position could potentially be in different multiple areas of investigation, including like the general crime and the high-tech crime and insurance fraud and missing people and the tobacco enforcement and workers' compensation fraud. Was that ever considered?
For the record, Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, the AG cost allocation plan, I think, is what you were asking about. Because this is a proposal that hasn't been approved, our cost allocation amounts that are going to the vendor for the actual cost allocation plan do still include funds for the positions that are currently in our administrative account, budget account 1030, in addition to a couple of the additional compliance investigators that we were talking about earlier. So our cost allocation plan is still going to move forward the way that it has in the past. And then if this is approved as we're moving forward, that is the point where we would have actual data from the upcoming biennium for the subsequent AG cap plan, in which case then we would look at actual time and effort that was spent on the administrative budget account activities and shift it from a per position cost in the cost allocation plan to an allocated cost for the investigations unit.
So you would have those changes, because right now it would be centralized in one budget account, and then those duties would be distributed, I guess, as necessary. I'm just wondering how you would go about making sure that the different various programs are charged appropriately for the work. Does that make sense? I
Yes,
don't know if I'm being
No,
clear.
yes. So Senator Wynn from Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez Thompson. So what we're going to do is set up a time tracking system so that we can then do the back end cost allocation to know, for example, the folks who are doing workers' compensation cases, investigation cases, that the number of hours they're doing that work, and then take that money from the dollars coming in the budget, like 1033, and then move them over to 1034. And the same for the other 5 budgets, total of 6 budgets that we're moving those investigators out of and planting them into here. So we'll have time and effort tracking.
Any follow-up? All right. Members, any other questions? Not seeing any. All right, then we will close the conversation. Hearing on budget 1034, and we will move on to our next budget, which is 1040, the grants unit.
Okay, Teresa Benitez Thompson, for the record, Chief of Staff to AG Ford. So budget 1040 is our grants unit budget. And so this is to strengthen response and policies of law enforcement, prosecution, victim services, increase offender accountability, implementing our statewide sexual assault kit tracking program, protection of elderly populations. A lot of that work done through this grant program here. So specific to enhancement unit 253, this is establishing the position of opioid coordinator within the Office of Attorney General. So this request funds from the Department of Public and Behavioral Health, Division of Behavioral Health Prevention and Treatment, which is budget account 3170, to transition a contracted position into a new state position within our office. So this position is very unique and it's highly praised because it bridges law enforcement and behavioral health activities. This position has been around, was created by the Laxalt administration, and really worked as a way to bridge the conversations and work that law enforcement was doing with the work that was happening in behavioral health. And this position, she's wonderful. She's been grant funded for 7 years, and it's just kind of time to stand this up as it's a highly effective position. She's more than proved her worth in terms of benefit to the state and the conversations in terms of opioid work that we've done. And so we would like to make this a permanent position within the Office of Attorney General. Decision Unit 254. This request fund transfer from the Department of Public and Behavioral Health Division of Behavioral Health Prevention and Treatment, budget account 3170, to support the Substance Use Response Working Group established during the 2021 legislative session with Assembly Bill 374. This is a very active committee, as Senator Stone could tell you. They've got 3 subcommittees. They've got a large membership, and this is the dollars to help support the management and organization of that committee. And we simply want to move it from DPBH over to us for management of that contract going forward. And that's mutually agreed upon, by the way. Decision Unit 806 is reclassifies one of the administrative assistant positions 3 to a grant and project analyst 1 position to better align the duties and the work performed with the title. We have no equipment replacement proposed for this budget.
Thank you so much. And we do have just a few questions. And we're going to go to Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. I know you're talking about taking the contract position and making it a quote-unquote real position. Talk a little bit about those duties and if those duties would be any different with her going to a permanent position versus her contract role.
Thank you so much for the question, Senator Taylor. Teresa Benitez Thompson for the response. We do not see very much a change in the duties that they're actually doing, just the structure of how the position is set up and how it's funded. So this person, in addition to working on the substance use response group, is also involved in all conversations opioid within our office. The hours they feel a 40-hour week as it is right now. We expect them to do the same 40-hour week. The way that it's managed right now is because it's a hybrid position between us and Department of Public and Behavioral Health. She reports her hours and time and supervisory work to Department of Behavioral Health, and then I actually approve the time on the contract side and go in and look at hours and approve that. And so as opposed to having that dual supervisory responsibility, in our office, she would officially land on our org chart, be within our grants unit, and then all supervision through our office of her activities and time.
Thank you. May I have a quick follow-up, Chair? Thank you very much. So what do you expect to gain? If it's 40 hours and 40 hours, what benefits do you expect to realize by making this shift?
To Senator Taylor from Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson, I think the gain is just a level of certainty that and an acknowledgement that this has been a very successful position. It's one that's been replicated by other attorney general offices and law enforcement. It's kind of held as a great gold standard for how to bridge the two communities and the two divisions, making sure conversations don't stay siloed on one side of the other or just law enforcement approach and then just a behavioral health approach, and the two never intersect. So the intersectionality is very important. So we would just like to see it memorialized and established in the office as a permanent fixture within our office.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, then we will close the hearing on budget 1040, and we will move on to our next budget and open the hearing on budget 1348, the Torques Claim Fund.
Thank you, Chair, Chief Benitez Thompson, for the record. There's an equipment replacement for computers in this unit, Decision Unit E710, but I have a question that might not be what you really want the topic of conversation to be about. So we'll go ahead and answer questions on tort claim.
Thank you so much. Then we will go to Assembly Member Hadigi for questions on budget 1348.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to ask these questions. And thank you for being here. It's great to see you as a former colleague. It's my understanding that over the last 6 years, the average reserves in this account has been approximately $4 million, and that the new recommendation is to lower it by 61% in 26 and then like 50% in 27. Can you give us more details as to why the governor is recommending these reductions in reserve? And then if it's okay, Madam Chair, I have like a 1.5 follow-up.
Thank you so much for the question, Assemblymember Howdigee. So the governor's recommended budget, and their thinking behind doing this is twofold. One, by not front-loading the general fund dollars into the tort fund, it keeps assessments to the agencies who pay into the tort from at a more reasonable rate. Secondly, is that if we exhaust the tort fund and we need to come back to request more money, then we would just do that through the mechanism that's in place, which is requesting more money from the statutory contingency fund. So their logic is, well, they'll just keep the dollars there and keep the process we have, and then we can present with those requests to the governor's statutory contingency fund.
Here's my 1.5. Okay, and it's our understanding too that these claims they're getting more expensive. So can you give us more details as to what's driving the increase in the general and vehicle tort claims? And the second part is if you expect to see these increased costs continue to rise through the biennium.
Yes, we'd be happy to answer that. I'm going to hand it over to Assemblymember Howdigee, Chief of Staff Teresa Benitez-Thompson. I'm going to hand it over to CFO because we get pretty nuanced when we talk about the automobile tort claims versus our civil rights tort claims and what might be happening with them and the analysis on that.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Benitez-Thompson. This is Jessica Hoban, Chief Financial Officer, for the record. I will also try not to get too in the weeds with all of the fiscal stuff. There are, based on your question, there are two primary things that are driving some of the changes. Adjustments to the vehicle-related rate. We have seen a couple of significant vehicular-related tort claims that have come up over recent years that have multiple claimants, and the dollar amounts are higher than standard. We believe that may have contributed to some of the shifts that you might be seeing. One of the other items that may have contributed to some of these costs, more so on the larger tort claims that we've had discussions about at IFC meetings. Those nationally some states are titling them the COVID bump. So that has also increased some of the costs that we've seen over the past couple of years. Tort claims and things like that oftentimes take a longer time to work from beginning to end. So I don't know if or when we may be seeing that coming down. Maybe it's already coming down, but if we have a case that's already 2 or 3 years in the process, there still may be some. Comparing it to the extraditions, we can more immediately see what the costs are. Whereas in the tort claim fund, it takes a longer amount of time for us to work those matters in those cases. So we also wanted to be cautious that we weren't inadvertently skewing or overestimating what the cost might be when our budget was built as well. So I think that there was some concern, and there have been some discussions about smoothing those amounts as well, so that we're not inadvertently causing higher costs for all of the agencies if it does happen to be a term-limited anomaly that we've been seeing. One other thing that I will just mention is a lot of the tort claim rates are calculated off of an actuarial report. And for this particular biennium, we were not able to contract with our former vendor. So we do have a different vendor for this as well. I know that LCB staff, as well as our staff, and I'm sure Governor's Finance Office staff as well, we have been having conversations. We're all kind of looking at the same actuarial report. But with this being a new vendor, we're going to see if there may have been some adjustments or changes. And if we do have areas of concern, we'll definitely share it amongst our 3 offices.
You're welcome. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Well, thank you. Then we'll close the hearing on the tort claims budget. And that is our last budget for today. So I thank you for being here and for the presentation and the information.
Oh, wait, we have one more slide.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, no. This is a little bit of a topic of conversation here before we end. So we do have an additional consideration that we want to bring before you for humble submission. Want to acknowledge that very much we know that it is complicated to come to legislative session with new requests that are outside of the governor's recommended budget, and figuring out where all the dollars and cents are going to come for things is it's a 120-day conversation, right? Well, more than that when you start with GovRec and then all the hearings. You guys have a subcommittee before you come in here. But we do have a request before you for consideration. Happy to have conversation about it. But the need, it has become more and more apparent to us that Attorney General Ford does need increased dignitary protection capacity, and it's more than what we're able to pull together in our office right now with our existing criminal investigator positions. We have tried using our own staff that are dedicated to other activities, and we don't want to pull them away from very other important investigative activities that are happening in the office. We don't want to take up too much of, we don't want to have that internal conflict on terms of being able to meet very important high priority things, which are some of our cases that are out there and our investigations that are out there, but also the protection of the Attorney General. I think one thing that has to be said across all representatives and all electeds is the people bring you here to do your job and to have tough conversations. And, you can get to know each other as human beings. I look at you, I know most of you. There's something I like about most of you. There are many things I like about many of you. And one thing that we would never want is anyone's to be hurt, right? To actually have harm brought to them in the course of doing their work, regardless of political differences, regardless of rhetoric, right? And so we do have a request in for specific dignitary protection staff to come to the office for AG Ford. It is 6 new positions, 5 investigators, 1 supervisor, 2 vehicles. We've submitted those numbers to your staff for consideration. Just so you know, we're having conversations with other entities in the state that provide dignitary protection, just so we can get a better understanding of operations and how they stand up their operations. Make sure we're trying to go about this as effectively and surgically as possible. This is a new area for our office, and so we do want to make sure that we are standing this up in the right way. And we would humbly request consideration of this, and happy to have conversations with any and all of you about it.
Thank you. And since this would be something new, I would suggest that you reach out to all of the members and have a conversation, share the information and the cost breakdown. I think all of us know that serving as an elected official has gotten a little more dangerous over the years. I mean, when I first came in this building, you could walk in, there were no metal detectors or anything, and we've had to harden our building. And we've gone from times where there were people walking around the building with long guns, and some of us, even members on this dais, have had hits put out on us, and there's a gentleman that's now in prison for making threats on legislators. So service is that, and it has become more dangerous for all of us. So I look forward to hearing what those conversations that you have and share that information with the members on the committee, so we can look into that. Members, any questions? All right, not seeing any. So now, thank you for being here. And that brings us up to the last item on our agenda for today, and that is public comment. Again, if you are listening online, you'd like to call in, the number for public comment is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 810-4722-4828, and then please press pound. And I will remind everyone to keep your public comments limited to just 2 minutes. We will start here in Carson City, go to Las Vegas, and then we will go to our phone line. So if there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to make public comment, I invite you to the table. Not seeing anyone move this way. Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas that would like to make public comment. AVH, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment at this time?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 to join the queue. Chair, we have no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. Well, members, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and the weekend starts. I know there's no floor or caucus on the Assembly side. I'm assuming on the Senate also. So if you're flying, safe travels. If you're driving, please be careful on the road. And we will see you all bright and early Monday morning for a joint meeting. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.